Welcome to Warblog. This little video is essentially to introduce objectives. The whole thing of objectives is still, well, what's like wet paint. It hasn't quite dried. I've only just done it. I already have seen an error. Don't worry about it too much. But I'm going to use this new game. It's actually kind of snazzy in its own right. The Central African Republic Civil War 2012. I won't bore you too much with the details. Essentially, we got objectives now. Now, the error is not so much an error in the objectives are not working, it's just they're not set up properly for this campaign. So, in this campaign, we've got, let's jump into play mode. So, in this campaign, we've got So in this campaign, we've got the Seleka units, and these are essentially the rebels. By looking at the little top bar up here, they're essentially part of the Central African Republic units that they rebelled. And essentially what they did was swept through the country, taking all these little objectives to take out the capital of Bangui. Bangui. So, but essentially, when they moved down, the first sort of thing they did, well, they took this place, they took this place, and they took this place. So these were the, I think on the 12th of December or whenever it was, these were the first three places they took. And then after that, they sort of swept down these roads, taking these places. This city here, Bambari, is the second largest city in the country, and they took that. So that would be an objective. I don't want to start this over again because it's just too much hassle. So that would be an objective. But here we've got three objectives. Now they're color coded, so it's probably just as well to leave it like this. So this is a Seleka objective. Now there will be a bit of color coding here to indicate that the Seleka ones, or this player, are in green. For the Car player, Cameroon Republic, their objectives are in red. Now we've got two types of objectives. We've got capture and destroy. The destroy ones are not in play at the moment, so it's only capture. So essentially what I'm going to do to demonstrate that is I'm going to move this, let's pen the turn. I'm going to move this car unit into Berini, which is a town. There. So we end the turn, and now if we look at the map, Berini is a contested objective. It's no longer a Seleka objective because it's been reduced from, now this objective is worth 30, and this objective, which is a capital, is worth 100. The value of the objectives will vary from game to game. It's not the capital will always be 100, a capital could be 500. So the weighting of these objectives is yet to be determined. I've just done this just through natural development. So essentially we can see that the objectives change colour depending on the state that they're in. Now essentially for the red player, their objectives, you can't really see it very well there, but it's minus. So essentially if it's, the objective value is 100, so as the red player you've got to get your objectives to minus the value, so minus 100. Here in Yippee Town, for the red player to capture that, they've got to get it down to minus 30. Well, it's already at 5, so they're part of the way there. Here they've got to go to full value because it's 30, and it's down, and so they've got to get it to minus 30 to capture that. However, let's sort of end that turn. Move him out of there. Yep, so the objectives stay the same. I'm half expecting errors, but we now move this unit into here. He's now captured that objective back. It's now gone back up to 30. Now, the way the objective changes hands, so to speak, is that it's dependent on the strength unit. So although that was, it's not misleading, but it was at 29, because I had a 2 strength unit, it would have gone up to 31. But we don't go over 30, we just know that it's now not contested. You know, you can't build up and build up so that it's completely unchallengeable. It's now the car units have been there long enough to determine that this is their objective. So essentially, there can be quite a lot of time between an objective going from one side to the other. So if you really want so basically, to capture an objective, you actually have to have troops sat in there for an extended number of turns in order to bring the swing the sort of the objective value into your favour. So obviously the red person wants to get to minus 30, and the green person wants to get to plus 30. So in order to change this one faster, the CAR player would have to put in quite a few units. So now, I've sort of done this before. These units are mobile, so I'll move them down. Using the roads, I don't know how much it costs to go through bush. I'm really worrying about that. Okay, so just to recap, it's a 30 objective, it's down to 5. That objective has now gone down to 3 because CRA player had 2 manpower in there. So we're not going to worry about this one anymore. Back to the CAR player. Now I've got these units here, which are worth 2 each. So move those in. Okay. So now, when we look at that, it's gone down from, I can't remember what it was now, 3 to 5. So that's a difference of 7. Out of interest, let's just look at what they've got in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I probably went through 0 point. So that would be about right. So we'll end that turn. And then it's the CRA player again. So we know they've got 8 value. Now they've got 9. End that turn. And it was at 5 minus 9 minus 14. So that's working. So basically they've got 9. So the next one would be minus 23. So let's just put that to the mathematical test. End turn minus 23. Yep, so it's minus 23. It might be difficult to see that. So we end that turn. The next turn, it's now a red objective, and it hasn't gone over. It's just gone to minus 30. This objective has now been captured, etc., etc. So essentially, I'm not going to sort of labour any more on that. I hope that makes sense. I might miss some really obvious things out, but essentially, what we're saying now is that we have objectives in the game. This is new. you're probably watching this video in 10 years time, it won't be new. But it's a new little feature now. Just a little bit about the idea of objectives. What I don't want to do is gamify the game, because I just think that cheapens the whole sort of intellectual premise of what we're actually looking at. It's not a sort of collect this many points, and that's the sort of thing that is used to incentivize people to do things, and there's no incentive here. But I think the difference that it does make, and I've sort of given it some consideration, is that without objectives, sometimes the actual idea of what to do can be actually fairly pointless, really, or difficult to make as a decision. I mean, for example, I think the one that, although I haven't got the destroy units in yet, the recent Israel Gaza 2014 thing, where they had to go in, basically had 42 tunnels, and the whole idea of the whole thing was to go in there and destroy 42 tunnels. So they would have 42 objectives. It wasn't to engage in the Hamas, it wasn't to do that, it was to get the tunnels. And so you can go in there without actually engaging in Hamas and take out these tunnels. In this situation, without the objectives, it's actually difficult to do that. You just go in there and pretend that you're looking for tunnels. So this gives basically some directive. I'm not sure whether the term asynchronous sort of fits in there, but it means that the objective is to some extent greater than the just destroying the enemy, which is sort of archetypal war gaming. So in this instance, obviously the objective is to take the capital. But essentially, I think it adds to the sort of kudos and the credibility of the game by actually identifying the objectives. I've tried to use sort of subtle colours. I don't want them to sort of be too onerous on the map, although I think they're sort of working. So, I mean, clearly this whole concept of objectives is pretty simple to understand. But I think in a lot of the past games, the objective hasn't necessarily been that clear, even if it's sort of written down. And so hopefully this will change the sort of basically everything, the entire emphasis of what to do. If you start looking at other sort of maps, I'm not going to start flicking through now, but just sort of looking at them and sort of thinking, well, what are the objectives here? Well, without these formal objectives, you just go and basically try and trash the other side. I mean, just as on a sort of a final note on that, struggling to remember what I was thinking about there now. Objectives. Just completely forgotten. What was I thinking about? Yeah, that was what I was trying to think about. Losing the plot a bit there. Essentially, it's not about. I know I've sort of mentioned this already. It's sort of really sort of just double track over that. It's not about gaining points. So that there's no sort of. I'm not going to introduce a. You need this many points to win this game, because I just, that's sort of exactly what I don't want to have happening. So you sort of. That's not the idea. It's just a game. It's a guide, a sort of reference, so you can actually understand what the objectives were, so you can play historically towards those objectives, as opposed to setting up like a tabletop game with two sides, balanced forces, and both sides having objectives. One side might not have an objective. I mean, mainly their objective is to stop the other people getting their objective, etc., etc. So I hope that makes sense. It's fresh off the thing, so it's brand new, so there might be a few errors, but yeah.